Hey there, design enthusiasts. Welcome back to another exhilarating episode of Better Products by Design. It's your host, Harko, gearing up to take you on yet another insightful journey. Today, we are diving deep into a realm where the physical meets the virtual, where brick and mortar fuse with bits and bytes. Imagine for a second, you're standing in an architectural masterpiece, feeling its grandeur. But wait, you're actually in your living room with a VR headset on. Mind blown, right? To help us decode this fascinating blend of architecture and immersive tech, we have with us a true trailblazer. She's a designer, a toolmaker, an XR developer, and so much more. Welcome, Andrea, the brilliant mind behind Numena and a force reshaping the boundaries of design and space. Buckle up, folks, as we explore how blurring realities is not just a catchy phrase, but a transformative wave in product design. Stay tuned. So yes, really warm welcome for Andrea. So would you like to talk about yourself and let us audience know what you do and what Numena is about?
Yes, definitely. And thank you so much for the invitation. Let's see. I was trained as an architect. Even before I decided to be an architect, I had I had interests that were very hard to put together. I loved math, but I also loved philosophy, and I was good at art. And at the time, architecture seemed like the thing to go after because it's like art, but it's also math. It kind of fit it. But there was still something that was missing for me. So even though I went to an amazing architecture school, and then I got my dream job in New York designing skyscrapers in Asia, something was missing for me. And I ended up changing jobs a few times in architecture because initially I thought it's just the job and the environment. And of course, we all know there's so many things wrong with working in a traditional architecture office. So for several years, I thought that was the problem. But after a while, and changing several jobs and going through several dream jobs where I had more and more creative freedom, I realized I was still unhappy. So that was my aha moment where it occurred to me that, yes, many things are wrong in the architectural profession, but in my particular case, maybe it's me. Maybe it's not them, maybe it's me. And the part that was missing was basically the philosophy and the creative part that I couldn't fit into the profession. Like, remember I said when I was young, I grew up with like philosophy, art, and math. And art and math were kind of being taken care of by being an architect, but not the like philosophy and my passion for ideas. So many years ago now, I got an invitation to a virtual reality studio in Stuttgart to go and try out something. I didn't really know what that was. At the time, I had never heard of virtual reality. This was maybe 8-9 years ago. And I said yes. I went there. I had to put this like weird stuff on my head. I didn't like that. But the moment I opened my eyes inside the goggles, I was just blown away. And that was the moment when I realized, okay, so there's this thing, this technology that, I don't know, kind of just appeared out of nowhere, at least for me, because I was just not aware of it. And it's basically a combination between architecture, because you have to design and build and model the worlds that you see in this headset, and programming, which for me was math, because you need to then be able to use code to add behavior inside those worlds to make things move and react, because it's not the real world, right? And that was still architecture and math, but it was so beautifully open-ended that it allowed me to bring in the philosophy and the ideas and that kind of excitement. So that's how this journey started. And 2 weeks after I had that experience, I quit my job and I just dedicated myself to becoming a VR developer, whatever that meant, because I had no idea at the time.
So like just wanting to understand like what was that kind of that transition that happened from architecture to XR? Like what made you take that jump?
The fact that I had gotten to this point in my life where my unfulfilled desire of full creativity and engaging with philosophical ideas was just painful because it was so unfulfilled. And I thought that architecture, the most I could have hoped for in architecture at the time, maybe today as well, but at the time and in my situation at least, was to be the lead designer of a big project and create a beautiful facade, right? That's like
Yeah.
where the Instagram shot, that's where, 5 years of your work will go. And the beautiful facade was just not enough for me to satisfy the creative and the intellectual urge.
Hmm.
And it is for many people, and many architects do create mind-blowing facades. It was just kind of, I felt it's not hitting the right spot for me. And I made the jump because I felt this overwhelming conviction, which is strange because it was not really backed by any fact. I had no idea what virtual reality was, but I just felt somehow instinctively this overwhelming condition, this overwhelming instinct that this is it. This is the technology that will give me all the stuff I want.
Great, great. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a good thing to transition to. But I feel like back in like before like 8 years, 9 years, you say, I think like XR was really nascent. It was in its really early stages. So you could imagine like what it could be like after 10 years, and you knew that this is what you want to do and something that you could change.
It's very strange now thinking back. It definitely feels like, at least from the outside, it feels like I reacted actually childishly. Because yes, it was in the very beginning. What I had tried was either a DK1 or a DK2 from the Oculus, this was like a DK stands for developer kit. It was the initial Oculus headset before it had been released to the market. So we
Ah,
were talking
the developer
about,
kit you're talking about.
yes, the developer kit. So
Okay.
we're talking about virtual reality at a time where you couldn't even purchase things from on the market. It was like before there was any market. So it's like, yeah, Andreea, what were you thinking? I mean, how are you going to make a living if this thing is like not even on the market? But
And that time there were
yeah,
no apps whatsoever. Like it's just
no,
hardware in the starting.
it was just
And
experimental hardware that only some developers had.
okay.
Um, it was a big jump, but I feel like no matter how hard people try to post rationalize the big decisions they've made in life, and they try to sell you that rationalization, I feel strongly, just to, in all honesty, that the biggest decisions anyone makes in life have to be backed by some kind of instinct, some kind of
Yeah.
like, I feel this is right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like we also tend to inspire and motivate designers out there. Like you gotta trust your gut. Like they get so and like there are a lot of designers out there sharing their work, and then they feel like, okay, I'm not as good as him, right? And then we just tell them like, okay, just go with your gut and just be consistent when you're designing, and yeah, keep up the good work. So yeah, it's really good. I think like we would now want to like understand like what N- Numena is about, uh, what you guys are there to achieve, and like how you guys like create architecture meeting with like the virtual spaces.
Yeah, so I call our work, we make simulations. but there's a range or there's a spectrum in the kind of simulations that we do. At one end of the spectrum, we use virtual reality to simulate spatial conditions before they're built.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not with the purpose of kind of rendering them. So it's not like an elaborate rendering. Like we're working, for example, with the German university to do behavior analysis. So we will model certain parts of a city or a street corner. We would do a few variations on that. And then there's a VR lab where we bring testers in and we're able to validate how people react in a certain built spatial condition. So we know how to further develop the design. So it's basically bringing user testing from tech
Okay.
into architecture. So at that end of simulation, it's quite literal, right? Like we work with engineers, we build something that will eventually become physical at one-to-one, but we simulate that first in virtual reality.
And see
And
how like users react to that
yes,
entire physical space. Ah,
yes.
this is nice.
And at the other range of the simulation spectrum that we do at Numena, you will find virtual spaces, virtual architecture, and virtual experiences for which we also do behavioral analysis, but which will never be built in real life because they're
Okay.
so out there and so crazy. They're just not meant for physical reality. So those are mostly games or just experiences with different purposes that are meant to always just exist as virtual experiences.
Oh, this is really nice. And it reminds me like I used to work in the previous company. It was like a design platform. They used to like host online design competitions. And we did host a design competition where we were tasked to like merge a physical space and a virtual space. And we took that example as a library. So, for example, there are a lot of books out there, right? And there's just limited physical space which is available. So the agenda was that the users will come to the library and they'll wear these headsets, right? The VR headsets, and then they can go into the virtual library, which is just endless beyond the limits of the physical space out there. And they can just go and, be in that Zen space, like, and do the reading and then just go back. So I was reminded of that particular project. But yeah, it really sounds good. Um, so talking about like the transformative potential, like for the immersive tech and like creating those user experiences and interfaces. So what do you want to say about it?
Let me go back to the spectrum and try to answer that question for both sides of the spectrum. So when we are doing behavioral analysis and simulations of physical conditions that will eventually be built, what's the transformative potential there? There's so many cases, and I'm sure each one of us can just think of a situation even from our neighborhood around our house where we wish things had been built differently.
Yeah.
Even in your own house, like I don't know anyone who's bought a house or an apartment who after even a few years of living there doesn't have like something that really annoys them. It's like, man, I wish the bathroom door would be here and not here. Like, damn it, why didn't the architect put a closet here? I could have really used one. Or so there's so many of those situations in the domestic space which are really, really obvious because they bother you every day.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people are even like not trained to notice those things. I think if we encourage people to notice, there would be an avalanche of things about their houses and apartments that really bother them.
Yeah.
And the same applies to the built environment, right? Streets and sidewalks, public plazas, intersections, and all of those things. And what we're trying to do is bring this idea of user testing so that you don't just have the team of engineers, which in most cases are highly qualified people who know what they're doing, But time and time again, we're seeing in these problems that they are not enough. Their perspective, for many, many reasons, is not enough. So you might have a committee of 10 engineers who approve something, but many, many times there are still problems that they did not think about. So rather than have 10 engineers, why don't we have 100 people who use a test virtually, that spatial condition, before it gets the building permit or before it goes ahead? And I think the potential there is just huge, because if you go from 10 people to 100 people and you pick those 100 people so that they cover a much wider range of ages, backgrounds, colors, genders, all of these people all of a sudden might bring to light problems from perspectives that usually those 10 engineers, which in many cases are like white men, might not have had or thought about.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good insight. Do you think, like, when we talk about this kind of a solution, we are looking at like just a closed building, like just it's just one building? But what about if we had to like use a test for an entire city? Uh, like test the concept for like a 15-minute city out there. So would that be feasible with today's tech and scenario?
Yes, yes. And we have worked on a city project where we have developed quite a large area. We are still somewhat restricted in how much of the city we can show in real time, but more and more solutions are appearing to allow us to, for example, progressively load more and more of the city as you're walking.
Uh,
But yes, absolutely. All of this can also be used for urban areas.
Great, great. Okay, so I think like if we talk about XR in general, like people perceive it as just gaming and entertainment industry. Like there are most of the games out there, even on Oculus, you can either like watch movies and like mostly games. And I think like this is one particular solution which actually uses the potential for XR in reality. So just talking about like how XR tools are becoming like an essential part for like designers, product designers out there and developers, like how they can leverage these tools to like create definite solutions like yours.
So one of the things we will be launching maybe by the end of the year, if not early next year, is a tool that allows people who want to prototype spatial conditions. So most of those people might be architects and designers, but also people that just want to do it for fun in virtual reality. This application comes from a set of tools that initially we have been using just in-house. So we developed it because we wanted it and we needed it for our own projects. But now we have packaged it in a way that allows us to just give that to everyone. Basically, you put a headset on and you're able to have access simultaneously to two scales. One scale is a little scale in a box that gives you the traditional God's eye perspective. It's as if you have like a cardboard
Ah,
model or something. But simultaneously, you are in that building at 1-to-1 scale. So if you pick a wall or a chair in that environment, you will always have in the scene two copies of that object, a little one and a big one. And this is quite fascinating because it allows you to do something we could never done before as architects. It allows you to have the rational God's eye perspective over your design
mm-hmm.
and experience the phenomenal effect of the space. So if I move a wall, I can move a wall at either scale. I can move the big wall because it's virtual. I can move it,
Mm-hmm.
and the little one will move, or I can move the little wall, and I will see
Ah,
the
those are
big wall.
connected. It's just scaled up
They're the
version of
same thing, right? They're
okay.
the same thing. So it becomes a very different type of design process. It feels very different than doing it on a screen, right, in a 3D computer software. because you are in the building at all times. So you start to become much more connected with how the height of the ceiling affects the quality of the space, with how maybe you don't have enough windows in the kitchen, of how even moving a tiny little window 2 meters to the right or to the left has a monumental impact on how that room feels at, like, I don't know, 3 p.m. in October. So it's very interesting. I think beyond this being a tool for productivity, so you're faster or whatever, we're actually not interested at all in making designers faster. I think being faster seems like one of the biggest issues, that we should be faster. Like, our salaries are so low because we're not fast enough. So if we could just draw faster, everything would be better. I think that's just the wrong way to think about it. So what the tool brings you is not efficiency, but just a fundamentally different way of designing and connecting during the design process with whatever your vision is of the end product.
Oh, that's really nice. I think like it will allow the designers, even like architects, like actually be there, experience it at the same time. Whatever changes they are making, they can see that how it's impacting, like at a monumental scale. And does this uh, influence like when they are doing the interiors as well?
Yes.
Or even like if they are designing like automotive parts for a car, for example, like it would be they can dissect and see, but then they can also like be there, experience how the driver will be, and if some obstructions. Yeah, this is really good. So when is this coming out?
Hopefully end of this year, if not
And
early
this will
next
be
year.
as like part of like developer toolkit, which will be available for all like Oculus or uh,
It
the
will be
other
an app.
headsets.
It will be an application you'll be able to download if you have a headset.
Oh,
So you
that's
have to go to the app store, whatever app store you have in your headset, and then just download it from the app store. Yes, it's something we're still using in our own projects. For example, now we are doing a renovation of an attic, and we measured the entire attic. We have rebuilt it virtually quite fast inside this tool. And at the end of this week, we're going to deliver a headset to the client and just leave them with a headset for a week. And there are certain parts in the attic that we have locked, right? Because certain parts are structural. So they should not be moving
move.
or
Yeah.
messing around with structural parts. But we have unlocked all of the proposed interior walls, furniture, walls, and everything. And we're going to allow them to make changes to those. And the application is very, very simple. So someone doesn't need any elaborate tutorial to use the UI or anything. Like a 10-year-old could use it and save different versions. So we're going to wait a week, and then we're going to go and see how they move stuff around, because I feel like aside from our own design process, which is fundamentally changed by applications like this, there's another part to it. There is this ability to bring the client in and give the client this unprecedented level of agency in the design process. Because yes, I think in one way, we, the architects, know better, right? We know where the kitchen should be and how you should enter and how you should exit. But there's also the counter argument. When we're talking about domestic space, who am I to tell you where you should have your bedroom and everything?
And it gets the client involved as much as they possibly want. And they can also experience the space. So it's not just they are seeing renders or walkthroughs in a video, but they can experience it like before it's built in virtual reality. And it's next to, I think, like the feeling of the real thing. And I think like this was this argument going on that the visual fidelity doesn't really matter in VR, even if like the graphics are not as real as possibly real life, they still have that feeling of immersion into the space. So I think this can really work good. Yeah, I mean, as we are talking about like blurring lines and immersive experiences, I think like we should not overlook one tech giant, which is Apple. And then they recently launched their Apple Vision Pro, which also promises this groundbreaking technology and stuff. So I just want to know like what you think about that particular gadget.
I haven't tested myself yet. The specs look amazing, so I think it's gonna be a wonderful, beautiful device. I think it's a testament to the potential of this technology. The technology has been going through kind of like the birthing pains in the last 10 years, so things are not smooth with either the developer side of it, the hardware side of it, and the standard side of it. Things are still bumpy in the space. So it's wonderful to see Apple stepping in.
Yeah.
It just basically telling all of us, hang in there. We also believe in you, that all of these things can be overcome.
Do you think like Apple entering into this space can make this actually go mainstream?
Yes.
So it's like I think like it's way too expensive for like the ordinary people to actually go out there and use it for fun. I think it's just games and the entertainment purposes which they'll be more interested in. But I think it's more geared towards people like you who are creating these transformative solutions and experiences around like a bigger tool set like architecture, for example, and then letting the users experience that. So
Yes
yeah.
and no. Yes and no. I mean, how many people do the two of us together know who are not in great financial situations, and maybe they have jobs that do not pay very well, but they save money for 2 to 3 years for an iPhone? I think we know a lot.
Yeah.
I think everyone does.
Yeah.
So Apple has reached this kind of moment of market brilliance in the history of
It's
mankind,
a great marketing company.
where anyone would have made exactly the statement you've just made many, many years ago, if they had been told, hey, people are gonna, people who are now well off would save for years to afford a phone that's $1,500. But here we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, definitely. So like, have you looked at the product like in the keynote or in the videos? And you
Yes,
have
yes.
used the other products which are out there on the market. Do you think like its design can compete or surpass what uh, I think like Meta also launched its Meta Quest 3. Uh, and I just want to understand like you experiencing these, hardware firsthand. Like, do you think like it can compete or surpass the other products?
I think they go after separate markets. So I actually think we will not see direct competition for a while, for at least a few years.
For
Eventually,
Apple or like
well,
Meta Quest 3?
The Quest 3 is much, much cheaper.
Yeah.
And it already has a very somewhat large library of games and other kinds of VR experiences. And I think it's a great entry point. The Apple headset, I do think there's a shot it will hit mass market despite the price, but that will take quite a while. It won't be in the first 2-3 years. Like you
Yeah, they're
said, in
saying
the
like
beginning, it will
they'll
be,
release like a cheaper version of it, but in 2027. They're
yeah,
not
yes,
planning to do it before that. But I think
yes.
like they're providing the best gadget out there, because I remember with the first iPhone launch, there was no app store. There were no apps, and it took people to I think like just within 3 years, they had more than 100,000 apps. And then in 2010, they launched the iPad, which is like a totally different altogether platform. And now developers got to design for phone and as well as for the iPad. So I think like it's I think the customer base and the developers out there and the loyalty they have with the brand, I think it's gonna like make it worthwhile. But let's see. I mean, I really hope that it kicks off. So just wanting to understand like how Apple Vision Pro could actually redefine user experience in VR.
I think it can redefine user experience in general, period, even beyond VR at a much larger scale. I think it's a fundamentally new paradigm for human-computer interaction. And this is really, really massive. It goes beyond any single gadget, no matter who's producing it. Interacting with a computer as an entity, whether or not it has AI technology, just simply interacting with a piece of technology using your entire body and using that gestures and having this piece of technology understand the direction in which you're tilting your head or where you're looking. It's such a paradigm shift. So yeah, it's
I think they
I
ditched the hand controllers and as well as they had eye tracking. So just with the human body, they could like manipulate those virtual experiences, which I think like Meta was not able to do. And still it has like more those kind of handheld controllers. And it says that it's there for like the haptic feedback from the virtual world so that you can feel it if you're doing it. But like what do you think?
the Quest devices have hand tracking, so they do know where your hands are and you can interact with your hands. They do have that. I think the way Apple is doing it is a smoother way, but I don't think it's just a matter, it looks like it's just a matter of degree, but I think there might be a more fundamental aspect to it. For example, in the Quest 1 and 2, the 3 a little bit as well, you can definitely see improvement in these interactions that make it feel like, again, you're speaking and interacting with a machine just by moving your hands in the air, like Minority Report style. But there have been many bumpy roads and there's still issues, there's still moments when things are not working. So I'm taken out of that moment of immersion and I'm reminded that, oh, there's a thing on my head and there's this piece of hardware and there are all of these issues and everything. And it looks to me that what Apple is doing is they're focusing so much on just this one particular aspect of this technology to get it to the point where it's so seamless, you forget. There are no bumps in the road. And that's what Apple is known for, right? Like, that's why you do pay ridiculous money for one of their products, although you never need all that power.
Yeah.
And you can send WhatsApp messages to your buddies on a phone that's $200. You do pay that extra because there's that feel of seamlessness.
Yeah, it's
There's that
the
like
ease that you
beauty.
feel. Yeah.
Yes, there's the
It
complete
just works.
beauty and ease. It just works, exactly. And I think this is what they're trying to bring to virtual reality. And it might just be what pushes the technology in, what gives it that right kind of push.
Because when I like looked at the keynote when they first announced the Apple Vision Pro, uh, they didn't had much like it was just entertainment. Like you could like create a 100-inch screen. You can get that immersive experience while watching like TV shows, Apple TV shows or whatsoever, right? Uh, but I was wanting to understand like given its powerful capabilities out there, like how it could revolutionize or help much in like architectural simulations.
I feel like the answer is very kind of simple in a dumb way. They There was a lot of debate that day on Twitter about what's the killer app that Apple just launched. Everyone was saying, look, all the stuff they're doing, the other headsets are doing it as well, and other devices were doing it before that. And sure, it's Apple, so they're doing it much better. But what's new and what's the killer app that they have launched today? And I tweeted that the killer app is just this amazing feeling of being embodied and communicated in the same physical space with a computer, with the machine. And it's a killer app because if they got it to the point where it feels so seamless, you will not want to stop. You will
Yeah.
not want to exit that space because it will feel so good and so smooth and so magic that you don't have to hold anything in your hand. You don't have to press any buttons. You don't have to do enter on your keyboard. It's like this amazing computational power is just there in the air at your disposal. I think that can be addictive. And whenever we are considering something that could potentially be addictive, let's in the positive sense, let's just keep it on the positive sense now, to the point where people go in and it feels so amazing they don't want to go out. It's not, that will have a massive impact on everything, including architecture, not just architecture, but imagine an editing space for your designs that feels so good in itself. You don't want to stop working because it just feels so much like magic.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of like having multiple screens and then you can shift your workspace and you can carry your workspace with you anywhere. Like it's just there. And yeah, I think it's like a really good perspective to look at. But let's see how people actually tend to use it and what kind of apps developers come up with. Uh, I just want to like have your personal thoughts. Like, would you ever consider like investing into such a device for Numena or like for yourself, and then consider it like developing those tools that we talked about earlier for
Yes,
this particular platform? Yeah.
yes, absolutely. We're looking into that. We would love to have our applications run on that headset for sure.
Great, great. Okay, so let's just talk about Numena's vision, like the products of tomorrow. So, like Numena is paving the way for like creating innovative products, which actually like transforms user experiences using XR. So, I just wanted to know like what are the future plans for these experiences?
We do a lot of research work to back up all of the things I mentioned. The products that we do and the work that we do, it doesn't just none of that is an idea that just comes to you or to me at the dining room table. There's been years and years of thinking and research and research grants that have helped us get to the point where I'm able to so clearly articulate to you what we're doing and what the product is. And this research continues. So I like your question. Where is this research going? Like, what's the next phase? Right now it's going strongly into exploring more the end of the simulation spectrum that I mentioned earlier that has to do with gaming, but not gaming in the traditional sense of doing something in an environment to collect points and things like that. Gaming in a sense, more in the sense of a story-driven experience that can be transformational. And transformational, it's a big word. I'm aware of that. I'm using it cautiously. My personal vision is to be able to offer these gaming/store experiences that help people experience themselves differently, that trigger a change inside them at such a deep level that there's a lasting shift. I think to some extent all works of art do that, right? Like when you're particularly moved by a song, you listen to it maybe for the first time, maybe not, and it's like, I don't know, 3-4 minutes of the song, and then it stops. And unless you rush to the next song, if it really moved you, you usually pause, and you can
Yeah.
feel for at least a few more minutes. If it really moved you and did a number on you, you might feel something for half an hour or a few hours into your day. You just feel just like, something.
Mhm.
I think virtual reality has the potential to bring that to the next level.
Great, great. Okay, so like just understanding like if new designers out there they want to like move to this XR space, like what do you have some like a piece of advice for them who want to like transition to this particular area?
They need to really know what they want at a level that's deeper than any particular discipline or technology. Because even saying I'm an architect and I want to design virtual spaces is not enough. Even within that, there's so much range. Like I mentioned, do you want to do simulations for building architecture? Actually, in itself, covers that entire range. And we know that, like, architecture goes from being highly utilitarian, like a bridge, to being highly charged with emotional, historical, cultural, religious connotations. Like we have these, beautiful religious buildings that move you to tears when you go inside. So even as an architect going into the XR space, you still need to narrow down your personal direction, even within that.
Great, great. So like just wanting to understand, like I think like a lot of designers out there in our audiences would like to know like how can they leverage XR to prototype, test, and refine their products?
There are several applications in virtual reality that allow you to do just this. What I just mentioned, our Numena's application will be coming to the market in a few months. But if you have a headset now, you're welcome to start already and try some of the other applications already available. And there's some for architectural space, and there's some also that are quite beautiful and really nice to use for product design. So you can already kind of jump in and get a feel for what's available.
Great, great. So like we talked about like AR, VR becoming like mainstream. So like how do you envision like the future of product design?
I think we will have to fundamentally rethink objects at an ontological level. So what do I mean by that is once this technology becomes more mainstream, a lot of the objects that we will be interacting with are not going to be physical.
Mhm.
That's already happening. It's already happening actually to a large degree, even without virtual reality. There's a lot of, let's call them digital goods, right, that are being exchanged. And I don't necessarily mean NFTs. Even if you look at gaming, people are exchanging weapons and powers in these game worlds. We are exchanging PDFs and not making books anymore. Well, we are making books, but still a lot of us, exchange books in PDF format. So this is a much, much bigger discussion, but I think there is a trend towards interacting with digital objects more and more. So if you really want to be kind of forward thinking and out there as a product designer, my recommendation would be to start to think bigger and more philosophically. At least, like, I don't know, put aside the 1 hour of your week and be like, in this 1 hour, I'm going to like think philosophically about the world and objects and what are objects, and try to see if you can trace trends going into the future, right? If you're a young designer, if you're in your early, mid to even late 20s, that is what you have to do, right? So get your basics figured out and learn workflows and tools that have been working for tens of years from older people. But if you're in your 20s, you have to be thinking about what kind of objects we will be predominantly be interacting with in 30 years from now, because that's where your career is going. That's what's going to take you up to the peak. And I think the answer to that is not easy, and it definitely involves insights into digital objects.
Oh, that's great. Really insightful. Okay, so we're gonna move to like a rapid fire round. I'm gonna ask you some questions and you just answer it. It can be one word or one liner. So shall we begin?
Yeah.
Okay, so favorite architect, Frank Lloyd Wright or Zaha Hadid?
Lloyd Wright.
Okay. First word that comes to mind when you hear virtual reality?
Bodies.
A tech gadget you cannot live without.
Pencil.
AR or VR, which excites you more?
VR.
One building or structure you wish you could experience in VR.
A whale.
Okay. Biggest pet peeve in XR development today?
UI paradigms that are used in immersive space, that are transferred from screen or mobile development to 3D space.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. The same. Okay. A book or article that dramatically shifted your perspective on immersive tech.
Merleau-Ponty's The Phenomenology of Perception. It's a mouthful.
Yeah. Okay. MIT or Yale, best memories?
Ooh, it's hard. Yale.
Great. Ideal setting for XR, like futuristic cities or nostalgic historic towns.
Historic towns.
Uh, I think we have talked about it, but still, I'm going to ask, like, Apple Vision Pro, do you think like it's a game changer or just another gadget?
It's a game changer.
A piece of advice for designers diving into XR and immersive tech.
Just the same old piece of advice that the Greeks have written on their temples 4,000 years ago. Know thyself, know who you are, and know what you really, really want, and no bullshit with that.
Okay. In one word, how would you describe the future of immersive architecture?
A bumpy road, because a lot of people who are creating virtual architecture right now don't know what they really want and what this is really about.
So you feel like we having the products out there in everybody's hand would like be the users who decide the vision for this.
Oh, no, I think I mean more, I mean this more in the sense of the narrow definition of virtual architecture. So you do see people with a training in architecture designing this futuristic looking things like Zaha, right? I
Mhm.
think they published a few months ago, even some kind of metaverse or platform with this like wavy stuff inside.
Yeah, that was for Neom, I think.
There's another thing. They are calling it something else, which is some kind of Zaha architecture platform on its own, independent from Neom. The For architecture that's just purely virtual, I think we're not asking in a way that's strict enough the question, what is this for? What exactly is the value proposition? And we're already seeing a very clear trend that's happening with everything that is just has compelling visual content. There is a wow element that lasts for a few seconds, and it's not replayable. It's not repeatable. There's no replayability like we say in games. We have seen that with virtual architecture, people doing beautiful virtual environments, and you go in and everyone's like, wow, and then that's it. We have seen that with text to image AI generators, right? Like Midjourney.
Yeah.
There was this flurry of that on LinkedIn when it first appears, and everyone was like, oh my God, these images look amazing, and we're done with that. So the question is, what is missing, right? Like back to my example with the song, there are some songs that just touch you to the soul, and you keep listening to them in key moments of your life forever. And so there's something in the song that, although the song is clearly 100% aesthetics, it's 100% just like the beauty of the melody, it goes beyond that. I think we have not yet figured out in virtual architecture and virtual environments that are just supposed to wow, what's the element that's supposed to go beyond the aesthetics and have you come back next month to be wowed again.
Wow. This was really an excellent insights. Thank you so much. This is where we conclude. It's really nice having you and you sharing your thoughts.